Hi. Okay. I am having a hard time introducing the show today because I've been sitting here with Kayla trying to figure out what is the best way to do this today. So I am so excited to introduce you guys. If you don't already know Kayla, this is Kayla.
Hi.
And we both say welcome, and we just want to invite you here into the space. So welcome to Not Alone podcast.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Good.
Oh man, I am so excited for everything that you're going to share. But for those of us who don't know anything about you, can you give us a little bit of background before we get going on the details of the trip you just came back from?
Sure. My name is Kayla, and I'm from Edmonton. I live not that far right now from Jessa. It's very nice.
It
is.
is.
Very short car ride today, because I loved.
It's a gift.
It is a gift. Born and raised in Edmonton. I've recently finished some school. I did my master's in theological studies. I might jump back into school because why not? The older I get, why not just keep going? And yeah, my family's here as well. Edmonton.
Okay. And you have like brothers and sisters?
I do. All of that. 5 nieces and nephews. Older sister, my brother-in-law, younger brother, and his wife. My dad and his lovely wife, as well. So, and we're all in the city, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Very amazing.
Very amazing.
So you were recently away for just over a month. You went on this trip out of leading and obedience to the Lord, or by the Lord.
Yeah.
So walk us through this.
Okay. So I was recently in kind of Central Eastern Europe. Right off the Baltic Sea is the country of Lithuania. And that's where I was for the majority of my time. I also went down to Poland as well after. And right off the sea in Lithuania is a city called Klaipėda. And there's a university there that does a summer language institute for Central Eastern European kids from all over that region will come to work on their language skills. It's also a Christian university, so that allows a lot of freedom just in terms of it being more missional, which I loved as well. And so we were with them for close to a month, doing all sorts of stuff, intensive language study, but then a lot of also just relational presence with these amazing young people.
Okay, so the students that came, some of them from war-torn places, like where?
Ukraine. It's quite war-torn. Yep. So they were actually from kind of all over. We had a number just from actually in Lithuania came, Latvia and Estonia, which are kind of just north. Some from Poland, but we had a lot jump on buses who they're not actually technically refugees from Ukraine because they're still living in Ukraine. And so they just jumped on buses at any of the main towns that they were either living in or close to, and took the long trip by bus right now with border crossing and all of that to come join us for a few weeks, and that was amazing.
So for them, it would be a nice break to get out of war.
Yeah, nice break. I think for them, it would have been both a nice break, but kind of a constant awareness of what's going on at home. A lot of following closely events, either with their families through different apps and news sources that they have. And so it was a break, but I think that we discovered that they were kind of always in both places, if that makes sense. But nonetheless, it was a place for them to be safe for a few weeks and to just meet other kids from just the area, region, and actually have a lot of fun as well. So that was pretty precious.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And students from Russia as well, unless you already said that, correct?
A couple from Russia. I don't know that they had been actually living in Russia because I think they're pretty tight right now with their borders. A few Belarusian students as well, and they were beautiful souls. Oftentimes like in years past, there would be a lot more. Russia and Belarus are typically big. They're represented quite well. This year they weren't, just because of kind of the logistics of war and border crossings and that kind of a thing. And so a few, but less so than in typical years. Yeah.
Yeah. So these students were able to come to you guys.
Yep.
And you covered them in prayer even if they didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, that part felt really important, I think, to me personally, and also to have like a team of people here that were praying, not just for me, but for them. And I think that one of the reasons I really actually wanted to go was for them, it was practicals of learning, working on their English, and that will be very useful for them in a variety of ways moving forward, for sure. But personally, this generation in that area of the world where the church is really suffering, and not suffering like necessarily persecuted, but suffering as in it's been a lot of years of the life being choked out of the church, and it's been 33 years, I think, since that whole Soviet bloc kind of splintered and they kind of regained their own national status. And that's all those countries, that's not just Lithuania, but it doesn't just go away. And what happened during that time as Soviet Union in the church hasn't healed at all. And so now there's no danger in becoming a Christian, but for a lot of these, I say kids loosely, like let's say between 15 and 20 is kind of like that.
Yeah.
But they don't know necessarily a vibrant faith because it's been a long time since that has existed within the church on a large scale. Of course, there's pockets of that everywhere. But to be able to pray over them and to pray over them by name, and not just me, but the other staff, and be really deliberate about, because we were in a Christian environment, technically, like a lot of them wouldn't necessarily, they'd be Catholic or Orthodox, but to be able to specifically tell them about the person of Jesus and show them consistent love and kindness to go with what we were telling them and praying for them, it kind of felt like, man, this is our part in breathing life back into the church here. One of our parts. And it happens through kids like these. You know, this is their area. They're the ones who are still there. And that region is going to change if and when. It will be not just through outside help, but through their own people, this own next generation that's coming. And so it felt, yes, like praying, all that to say, praying felt like an honor and a privilege and a responsibility in a sense, because that's how change is going to come.
Okay, so as you're praying for the atmosphere and you're praying for these young adults, how would you describe the different atmospheres that you could sense as an intercessor?
It was hard at first. The first, like, I'm gonna say the first probably 5 or 6 days. And on top of that, there's a bit of a time difference, and so I know for all of us, we were feeling tired and trying to adjust. But it really was like walking into almost like in a spiritual sense, like this, almost like a steel container, where it was like just dead and hollow and sterile and lifeless, and not just like this feels just lifeless. It just feels like almost like a stronghold of lifelessness, if that makes sense. Yes. Where it's not a neutral kind of a feeling. It was more of a contested, almost you could feel almost like the tension in the land and in the atmosphere of some very long-standing just ways of operating spiritually, that it wasn't just that things felt like they were lacking life, but it's almost like you could almost, it felt like that was still very tangible and almost electric, which almost sounds like that wouldn't work in a sense. It's like, how can something feel both dead and feel like almost pulsating with this weird energy? And yet, there's both of these things happening, and it was very strange. It was very strange, very strange. Mm-hmm.
Is there how would you describe the difference from when you first arrived and you first started sensing these things for the very first time till about the end? Was there any change?
Snacks helped. They have this food there. Okay, so it's called Lithuania, and it's like fried bread. It's like fries that are made of bread, like rye bread.
Right.
Oh. So that really helped me adjust. I eat it all the time.
Whenever you're feeling this tough atmosphere, you just eat the
bread. I need some of these fries. And with a cheese sauce, you kind of need both.
Right.
And so snacks help. And I mean, I say that jokingly, but I think that it's kind of a point where you really do need to find ways to relieve that tension. And sometimes that's just like, I just need to either make a bad joke or have a snack or have a nap or something that is a bit of almost like a pressure release. And that, I think giving permission to do that for myself really, really helped. Yeah. And so by the end of it, I don't know that it felt the same kind of that constricting feeling. And I don't know that you necessarily adjust in a sense more. And this is probably true of anybody who goes anywhere. It's not quite so jarring, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
And so it's almost like you could kind of hold it more loosely and feel less intimidated by it, if that makes sense as
yes.
well. And so it's just not as feeling overwhelmed, even though like this still feels really funky. This still feels like a lot of layers, and there's a lot of trauma in this land and in this region that you can kind of be aware of, but not feel quite as overwhelmed by.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
Would you, how would you describe, would you say that your call to go to this location and to pray for these people, that you accomplished the call in the short time frame that you went? Or do you feel that there's more?
Oh man, that is a good question. I feel like it's one of those moments, and I'm sure again this is just true with me, and this is true in a lot of things that we kind of say yes to and do, is that I feel like I was obedient. And I don't know that that's the end of what this obedience looks like, per se, but it felt like the Lord was looking for a yes. And it wasn't a perfect yes. There were some days where I probably could have prayed harder. You know what I mean? Or maybe could have done better. And other days where I kind of nailed it. You know, it is kind of both. But at the end of the day, it felt like the Lord had my yes, and that was enough. And where moments where maybe I could have done better, or could have given more, or could have been more present, He would make up for. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because I feel like if it all depended on me doing everything exactly as I wanted to all of the time, like 24 hours a day, 100% on, this can't depend on us. You know,
yeah.
I'm not good enough for that. You know, or I'm not capable of doing what is really required to actually create the actual lasting change there. But I think one of the things that I've learned over the last few weeks, or was reminded of, is that that's okay. That's not what God was ever looking for. He was looking for a yes, and He was looking for obedience. And that, in that sense, yes. Because I went
Yes.
And I have no doubt that more happens by our simple prayers, whether we feel like the most profound and like eloquent thing ever, than we will even realize. One word, 1 minute of prayer can change an entire outcome for either a life or a nation when it's done in faith. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so when it comes to seeds planted, I have no idea what God will do. And so that part I leave up to him, but he had my yes for this, and then he also has moving forward.
In leading up to your yes,
Mm-hmm.
and what came after your yes, you really had to push through
Mm-hmm.
and essentially be an overcomer, as we're all called to be an overcomer,
Mm-hmm.
to get from A to B.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you want to talk about in that process?
Yeah, that wasn't that fun sometimes. I think that feeling of, am I sure about this? Because life all of a sudden feels a lot more difficult after saying yes to this. I don't know that I'm loving this. You know that feeling
Yes.
where you're like, okay, I'm all in, and then practically, tangibly, spiritually, emotionally, it can get really kind of just dicey in a sense. And I didn't love that, but I think that's okay. It's okay for it to be like that. I think what would not be okay is for that to change your minds and just say, I'm going to take my yes back. And so I think that there are moments in that leading up part where I needed help. I mean, I called you sometimes, like, Jessa.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what those sorts of things helped actually keep the yes as a yes and not taking that back into a no.
Yes.
Where it's just like, okay, I'm struggling. This is hard. I'm tired. Spiritually, things feel really weird. This is pushing through. This is hard work. And I think just not doing that hard work by myself in some moments really, really helped a lot. And so I think there's parts of it that we have to own for ourselves. No one can say yes for us. Like, no one can say yes for you. No one can say yes for me. I got to own part of that is my responsibility, because it's me that God was calling to go. And yet, you're never really doing it on your own. And so then it's kind of finding ways of like, okay, so I'm responsible for the yes, but I'm going to need help.
Yeah.
Right now, because it's a weak yes. Today's a weak yes. Tomorrow might be a strong yes. When it's a weak yes, I'm going to need a little bit of grace for people. There are moments where I'm like, oh man, I just need my friends to have, family have grace for me, because I'm crabby and I don't really know what's going on, or I'm tired, or I'm feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and those are the moments where I think, like, we have to kind of have help.
Yes.
Saying yes and keeping. Like, just don't turn around and go back.
Yes.
Don't quit.
It could look tempting.
Yeah, I know. Just an email like it said, I can't come. I'm busy now. All of July. Take it back.
Yes. But you went.
Mm-hmm.
You went well.
Mm-hmm.
You went strong. Strong does not mean you're going with, your own strength.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that means you're going in all of your weakness, and then that's when obviously we know the Lord's strength comes over us and he just takes over and things start shifting, right? But you went, and I think you have left a legacy on earth for others.
Yeah.
The beginning of a legacy.
Yeah.
And I also think your mom was watching you.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine how proud she is of you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
And even, again, just back to those prayers for the younger generations, it's like your prayers that you were obeying through the Lord, spreading those seeds onto that generation. Nothing can take those prayers away. They actually don't stop. They keep going.
Yeah. It was really cool too, was the idea that I wasn't just like taking even like my own prayers, but the people here who were praying, it was their prayers as well. It's kind of like carrying a bag of seed and mixed in this little bag were like seeds of my own prayers and seeds of other people's prayers, and grabbing and throwing those out onto this ground. It was both. And so some of the things that like my friends prayed are taking root there now too.
Yeah.
And that I really, really love, because it's not, if you can just like, it's almost like a shared legacy of going on behalf of, myself, my family to an extent, but also all of the other people who were part of the journey. It's just like, man, like that's, now it's your legacy too, for example, which I really, really love, is that those who helped me not change my mind and say no, it's their legacy now too.
Wow.
And those who prayed for some of these kids by name, I don't get to own this all for myself. It's a shared thing now, where it's my legacy, it's yours, it's our friends, it's my little prayer team that was praying. It's all of ours, which I really, really love. And that's just how kingdom works, though.
Yeah, unity in the body of Christ.
Yep. We don't do these things alone.
Yeah. So before we jump into the next section, which will be a little bit of your last days, is there anything else you want to share that we have not touched on?
I really love that region a lot. And they really have great potatoes and bread and cuisine. This really matters to me.
Yeah.
Good snacks. Good snacks. I ate really well. And the sea is beautiful. And there's so many things about this area that feels like there's a lot to love, but there's a lot to be fought for there too.
Yeah. Could you ever see yourself going back? Obviously, if the Lord called you back.
I would love to. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the last couple of days, where did you go?
Oh, the last few days, I took 2 buses and a train.
Wow.
Through the night. I am too old for this. I discovered that I am not as young as I used to be. It's not even just like, I don't even just have like the numbers to prove it, but I actually like felt it in my body, where I was just like, I don't know that like taking a bus through the middle of the night in the middle of Poland is really like gonna feel as good tomorrow as it would have maybe 20 years ago. But that's fine. It's fine. I got there. I didn't get lost, which is really impressive. But
yeah.
Anyway, I went to southern Poland, which is Krakow, and spent the last 4-ish days and flew home from there in that area. So much history, like just so much history, so much necessary and relevant history to not just reflect back on, but to learn from, and to be shaped by, and to bear witness to. Like that region, Poland in general, that region in particular, in southern Poland, man, like there is some history there that we need to bear witness to and not forget. Just a whole contested over region that, again, you can feel, even amidst the beauty, that the city was one of the most fascinating, just magnificent, architecturally stunning, and so well preserved. I think it was one of the only cities in Poland that wasn't really, like, literally almost torn down brick for brick during World War II. It escaped a lot of that, but there's a lot of devastating history in that region that I wanted to see and be present with and remember, and somehow let that shape my own heart and my own response to the past, so that I don't know, I want to shape who I am so that I can do my part in the future. Like, how do we never allow for this, especially within the church, again?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
A lot of devastating history, mostly within the last 100 years, a lot of war history. World War II history. It takes place in this country of Poland, and
You went to Auschwitz,
Yeah.
and you don't really have language for it, so you're still processing that. As difficult as that is, are you thankful that you went?
I am. I wouldn't trade it. I would do it again. If I had to go back and re-choose, knowing all that I know now, there's no way I would leave that out.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you're back home with us.
Thanks. I'm glad to.
Thank you so much for taking time to share
Oh, thank
with
you.
all of us. We appreciate it, and it's good having you in another part of the world, knowing that you were answering exactly where you should. I guess what you're doing exactly what you should be with the Lord, co-laboring with Him.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly so thankful that you're home and that now we live just a few minutes away from each other.
I know. I am so thrilled to come back to having you almost as like a neighbor. What?
Yeah.
This is the best thing ever.
The move happened so quickly. It just, everything was like just transition, all just going with the Lord's flow.
And here we are, and it is the best thing ever. Oh my
So amazing.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much.
I have an idea. Is there a piece of advice you would want to leave for the next guest, knowing that you don't even know who the next guest is? It doesn't even matter. It's just, is there a piece of advice? And then we can add this to the information to the next one.
Ooh, does it have to be like
anything
appropriate advice?
It doesn't have to be appropriate. Not at all.
Careful. Careful with that one. Oh goodness. You know, I think that one of the things that I would leave as advice, not just to another person, but that I want to tell myself, like if I could give advice to myself as well and learn really, really well, is that the Lord doesn't require a lot more than just our yes sometimes. And just saying yes sometimes is all He's looking for.
Amazing. Thank you.
It was clean.
Very, very good.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for watching and just being with us today, and we will see you soon.